Today, we're going to crack open a legal document that, might seem a little dense on the surface, but it's actually a fascinating rulebook for building economic trust between two nations. We're diving into the 2012 investment agreement between Iraq and Armenia, a pact designed to let businesses cross borders with a whole lot more confidence. And it really all starts with one simple but very important question.
Right. So just imagine you've invested millions, maybe your life's work, to build this amazing, state-of-the-art factory in another country. It's working. It's creating jobs, it's making a profit, but what's stopping things from going wrong? What happens if there's political turmoil, or the government just decides to change the rules overnight? This right here is the fundamental problem that agreements like this one are designed to solve.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at why this pact even exists. Then, we'll figure out what it actually protects. We'll get into the rules of fair play, the safety nets for when things get chaotic, how you settle arguments and get your money out, and finally, we'll zoom out and see why this whole thing really matters.
Okay, Section 1, a pact to build trust. Before we dive into all the legal nitty-gritty, we have to understand the core mission. What was the whole point of this document? And you don't have to look far. It's stated right there in the preamble. It's all about creating confidence. The big idea is that if you encourage and protect investments, that's going to spark business initiative and lead to more prosperity for both countries. It's pretty simple, really. Create a safe and predictable environment, and business will come.
So to build that trust, you first have to be crystal clear about what you're protecting. Which brings us to a super important question. What exactly counts as an investment according to this agreement?
And what's so interesting here is just how broad the definition is. Article 1 calls an investment every kind of asset owned or controlled by an investor from the other country. But here's the kicker. It has to be adding value to the economy. So it's not just about owning something. It's about actually contributing.
So what does that look like in the real world? Well, it covers all the stuff you'd expect, right? Things like stocks, buildings, machinery. But it goes way further. It also includes claims to money, rights to go look for minerals, and even things you can't touch, like patents and copyrights. The list is designed to cover pretty much everything.
Okay, so now that we've figured out what is protected, we can get to the real heart of the agreement, how it's protected. This section is all about the fundamental rules of fair play.
The absolute bedrock principle, you'll find it in Article 3, is something called fair and equitable treatment. Think of it as the golden rule for how a host country has to act. It's a promise that they won't mess with an investor's business through unreasonable or discriminatory measures.
And this is where it gets really powerful. An Armenian investor in Iraq has to be treated at least as well as a local Iraqi investor. But wait, there's more. They also have to get treatment that's just as good as what investors from any other country get. So let's say Iraq gives a special tax break to a French company. Well, they have to offer that same deal to the Armenian one. Basically, the investor is guaranteed the best possible treatment available.
All right, Section 4, protection in a crisis. This is where the agreement looks an investor's biggest fears right in the eye. What happens when things fall apart? What's the ultimate safety net? I mean, just listen to the language here in Article 4. It's intentionally dramatic. It lists out all the worst-case scenarios you can think of: war, revolt, riots. The whole point is to say to an investor, look, even if total chaos breaks out, there are still rules. If your property gets destroyed or taken over during something like this, you have a right to compensation that's just as good as what the country gives its own citizens.
And then there's the other big fear, expropriation. Article 5 defines this as any government action that effectively takes away your investment. And it's not just about them literally seizing your factory. It's any measure that robs an investor of their ownership, their control, or the main benefits of their investment.
So let's just cut to the chase. What this really means is that the agreement builds a powerful shield against a government unfairly taking what you've built. It draws a very clear line in the sand.
Now, the agreement is also realistic. It gets that sometimes a government might need to take property for a legitimate public purpose. But, and this is a big but, if it does, it has to follow 4 incredibly strict rules from Article 5. First, it has to be for a public purpose. Second, it can't be discriminatory. Third, the compensation has to be based on the fair market value from right before anyone knew it was happening. And finally, that payment has to be made fast, without delay.
So now for Section 5. Look, protections are great, but how do you actually get your profits out of the country? And what happens when a disagreement just can't be solved with a handshake?
Article 6 gives a really clear answer on the money front. It guarantees the free transfer of all kinds of payments, profits, dividends, you name it, into and out of the country. For any business, knowing you can actually get to your capital is, well, it's everything.
But there is a little safety valve here.
If a country is in the middle of a serious economic crisis and needs to protect its national finances, it can hit the pause button on those transfers, but only for up to 180 days. So it's a clearly defined temporary emergency brake, not some random freeze.
And if a dispute does pop up, Article 8 lays out a super clear timeline. It all starts with a written request that kicks off a 180-day period to try and work things out amicably. If that doesn't work, the investor gets a really important choice. They can either take their case to the national courts of the host country, or they can opt for international arbitration, a neutral third party to settle the score. So let's bring this all home in our final section. We've waded through all the articles and clauses, so why does it all matter? What's the real big picture here?
For an investor looking at Iraq or Armenia, this whole agreement really just boils down to 5 simple, powerful promises. You will be treated fairly, your stuff is protected, you will get paid if it's taken, you have a clear way to solve problems, and you can get your money home. It's a full package of reassurance.
But as we saw right at the very beginning, this was never meant to be a one-way street. By giving investors this kind of security, the goal is to attract the kind of long-term investment that builds roads, creates jobs, and ultimately leads to that goal of increased prosperity for everybody involved.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. At its core, this agreement is just a carefully designed system for building trust in a situation that might otherwise feel risky. So it makes you wonder, if a clear set of rules can build economic confidence between nations, what other huge global challenges, from climate change to data privacy, could we maybe start to solve with the same kind of approach?